Welcome back to the Empowered Empath. Everything is vibration. If you're experiencing a spiritual awakening, you have probably heard this phrase. You've likely stumbled across it if you're doing any kind of spiritual study, as it typically tends to be the foundation for many spiritual concepts, not the least of which is the law of attraction and manifestation work. And it also leads us to buzz phrases like, your vibe attracts your tribe, and vibe higher. But what does it actually mean, and how do you apply that? Today I wanted to give you the science behind this statement because it is actually a scientifically valid statement. Everything really is vibration. So today I'm going to give you the science behind this and the value to you in understanding how everything is vibration is it is going to give your logical left-brained mind a logical explanation for how the universe works. And if you understand better how the universe works, you can understand better how you can work with the universal energies and this vibratory nature. Hello, lovely souls. My name is Seraphim, and today I am going to break down the science behind the statement, everything is vibration, using quantum mechanics and wave-particle duality. So first of all, what are quantum mechanics and wave-particle duality? Quantum mechanics is defined by Britannica.com as the science dealing with the behavior of matter and light on the atomic and subatomic scales. So basically, the behavior of matter and light on the smallest possible scale that we can measure. To understand wave-particle duality, on the other hand, we first have to understand the difference between waves and particles. Particles are essentially matter. They're solid. You can hold a particle in your hand. You can throw a particle. This cup is made of particles. It's matter. It's solid. It behaves like a solid object. Waves, on the other hand, are not solid objects. Think radio waves or sound waves or even light. You can't grab hold of a piece of light and take it with you to the other room. You can't grab hold of a sound wave and take it somewhere with you. In this way, waves are very clearly different than particles. But on a quantum level, waves and particles have a great deal more in common than they may initially seem. We can actually think of particles as being localized packages of waves. So my cup then is really just specifically arranged, localized units of waves, particles that are these localized packages of waves. Now in the case of light, something that we otherwise consider a wave, one single unit is known as a photon. Remember, I'm speaking specifically on the quantum level, so on the smallest possible measurable scale. This dual nature of waves and particles is known as wave-particle duality, and it demonstrates for us that all objects have characteristics of both waves and particles. This is demonstrated through the double slit experiment. You may have heard of this experiment because in 2012 it was actually used to challenge wave-particle duality. And that made big news because wave-particle duality had been considered proven science. Since then, although the experiment did raise compelling questions about the nature of consciousness and its influence on our reality, it was found that wave-particle duality was not overturned by the results. So if you've heard of this experiment, you're not really sure why, this may be why you've heard about it. The double slit experiment was first performed by Thomas Young back in 1801. In the experiment, he shone light onto a screen through a plate with two narrow slits cut into it. What was observed was something called an interference pattern. Essentially, the light behaved much like water would have as it traveled through the two narrow openings. Simply put, an interference pattern is created when some waves cancel each other out and other waves amplify each other. This was considered solid evidence that light behaves like a wave. It was later through the work of Albert Einstein we came to understand that when light is traveling through space, it can behave like a particle. Einstein called these particles of light photons, and eventually experiments proved him to be correct. Armed with the results from the double slit experiment with light, Einstein's photons, and his theory of relativity, it was a Danish physicist named Niels Bohr who took all of this one step further. He suggested in what was at the time a theoretical experiment that if the double slit experiment were replicated using electrons and there were only one slit in the barrier, that those electrons would behave like particles and would pile up on the other side of that slit. Essentially, that they would behave like particles, like matter. No surprise, this is what we would expect them to do. Here's where it gets interesting. He also suggested that if we did this experiment with both slits present in the barrier and we used electrons, that the very same interference pattern would still appear, even though we are using electrons and not waves. Essentially, he was saying that under those conditions, electrons would behave as light had, that they would behave as a wave. Bohr said this was because with one slit present in the barrier, the observer knows the path the electron is going to take. Therefore, the electron takes that path and behaves like a particle. However, with two slits present in the barrier, the observer doesn't know the path the electron is going to take, and therefore we observe this interference pattern. Well, that was back in 1913, and we have come an awfully long way since then. It turns out Niels Bohr was right. His theoretical experiments have since been carried out using electrons, and the results he predicted have been observed. Okay, so what does all this have to do with vibration? Well, if waves are present, vibration is present. We can measure the frequency or vibration of a wave, and frequency essentially is measuring how many waves pass a particular point in a set amount of time. So Hertz, for example, measures how many waves pass in a 1 second interval. In this context, frequency is defined by Oxford Dictionary as the rate at which a vibration occurs that constitutes a wave. The rate at which a vibration occurs that constitutes a wave, either in a material such as sound waves or in an electromagnetic field such as radio waves and light, usually measured per second. Matter exhibits the properties of both a particle and a wave. In its expression as a wave, we can measure the frequency of its vibration. Now, if we know that on the quantum level, particles are just like packages of waves, and we can measure the vibration of those waves, this proves for us that everything in creation has a vibration. Now, to take it one step further, I alluded to the experiment that was done, the double slit experiment that was done in 2012, and how the results challenged wave-particle duality and raised some questions about the nature of consciousness and its influence on our reality. I want to elaborate on that a little bit. Essentially, scientists wanted to observe the electron as it moved through the double slit apparatus. They wanted to see what was happening and see how that electron was creating an interference pattern. In order to do that, they had to introduce photons, or particles of light, into the double slit apparatus so that they could measure the location of that electron. They ran the experiment, and what they found was that when they observed the electron using the photons, the waveform collapsed. The electron behaved like a particle, which is what we kind of would have expected all along. In the results, it was suggested that the only variable that had changed was the consciousness observing the electron. But we know that's not the case. Photons were introduced, so the environment is fundamentally different. When you take that into consideration, this experiment just doesn't give us really satisfying evidence that consciousness creates our reality. The good news is that's okay. We have lots of other compelling science, and more every day, that's helping to demonstrate this for us. I have before pointed to the work of Dr. Emoto on this channel, and I'm going to take a second here to do so again today His work with water has demonstrated how our thoughts and intentions have a measurable impact on the environment around us. I'm also going to link to the Institute of HeartMath, who is also doing really interesting work on our heart's resonant field and how our electromagnetic field can impact our environment and the people around us. So definitely encourage you to check out both of those links. I'm really excited by where I see science going in recent years. I find that it's finally starting to give language to ideas and concepts that spiritualists have been trying to communicate forever, basically. And I also very much believe that spirituality and science can not only coexist, but very much bolster and enhance one another. I need my spirituality to be supported by science because I'm very practical. I have a very strong kind of left brain side of me where I like to know how things work and why things work the way that they do. So having science really give language to this and support these concepts is immeasurably satisfying. Everything truly does come down to vibration, energy, matter. It's all the same. It's all vibration. And learning to work with that vibration is what most people would consider magic. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic. I know this was really heavy on the science stuff, but I hope you enjoyed. If so, give me a thumbs up. Let me know if you'd like to see more videos that are kind of sciencey like this, or that are giving you the why, how, that sort of thing. I'm certainly not a scientist. I'm not an expert, but it is something that I really am fascinated by and passionate about. So I'm happy to share these kinds of topics with you. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. If my content does resonate with you, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell before you go. And you can visit me on Facebook or tarotbyseraphim.ca if you'd like to learn more about my practice. Or I'm getting tired, you guys. This was a really sciencey one, okay? I also host the Empowered Empath Facebook group, so I'm going to link to all of that in the description below as well, along with all of the references from today's video. So thanks so much again, blessings, and we'll catch you next time.